This is our third video for Chapter 4. This is Chapter 4, Section 3, Proportions. The two terms you need to define in your notebook from this video are proportion and cross product. When you see them, be sure to number them in your notebook and define them with what's given in the video. A proportion is an equation stating that two ratios are equal. One way to test if ratios form a proportion is to write both ratios in simplest form. Then see if they are equal. Now let's look at writing ratios in their simplest form. Say we want to write the ratio of students who saw a movie to the total number of students for each class. Do the two ratios form a proportion? If we look at the first class, we have 10 students that did go see a movie out of 24. So Class A is 10 out of 24 is our ratio. Now, to simplify that, we want to divide both the top and the bottom by the greatest common factor of 10 and 24. The greatest common factor of 10 and 24 is 2. So we have 10 and 24 both divided by 2. So 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 24 divided by 2 is 12. So our simplified ratio for Class A is 5 to 12. Now let's look at Class B. In Class B, we have 25 students did go to a movie out of a total of 60. So our proportion for this one is 25 over 60. Just like with Class A, we want the greatest common factor, so that's going to be 5, because 25 divided by 5 gets us 5, and 60 divided by 5 gets us 12. So since Class A and Class B simplify down to the same ratio, those two classes are in proportion. Pause the video and do this one in your notebook. Remember to label it as exercises, number the problem, and write down the original equation, show all your work. A key concept to remember about proportions are that ratios that are equal form a proportion. So to have a proportion, you have to have two ratios. So for arithmetic, it would be as a ratio of 6 to 8 forms proportion with 9 to 12. Or with algebra, A to C forms proportion with C to B as long as neither C nor B equals 0. For ratios, the cross products are the two products found by multiplying the numerator by the opposite denominator. So let's look at a proportion. We have 6 over 8 equals 9 over 12. And we want to figure out if this is a proportion, if these two ratios are in proportion. So to get our cross products, we would take 12 times 6 and 8 times 9. So now our cross products would be 6 times 12 equals 8 times 9. And the reason this is useful is once you actually do those calculations, it's an easy way to figure out if the ratios are in fact in proportion, because if they're in proportion, they should equal the same number. 6 times 12 is 72, and 8 times 9 is also 72. So these pair of ratios is in proportion. The key concept to remember for the cross products property: if two ratios form a proportion, the cross products are equal. If two ratios have equal cross products, they form a proportion. Now let's try using cross proportions. Do the ratios given form a proportion? We have 5/9 and 30 over 54. So if we do cross proportions, we want 54 times 5 and 9 times 30. So 5 times 54 equals 9 times 30. So let's see, 5 times 54 gives us 270. 9 times 30 also gives us 270. So this one is a proportion. Let's look at another one. We have 7/8, or 7 to 8, and 55 to 65. So again, we're going to multiply the second denominator by the first numerator. So that gives us 7 times 65 equals 8 times 55. 7 times 65 gives us 445. 8 times 55 gives us 440. 445 and 440 obviously don't equal, so this is not a proportion. Pause the video and do these three in your notebook. You need to determine whether the ratio forms proportion. You can use either the greatest common factor way or the cross proportion way. Check your understanding. Be sure to label this as check your understanding in your notebook. Number 1, vocabulary. A proportion states that two blank are equal. 2, number sense. Without writing 3 to 5 and 9 to 15 in simplest form or using the cross products property, how can you tell whether the ratios form a proportion? Fill in the blank so that each pair of ratios form a proportion for 3 through 8. 9, error analysis. A student used the cross products property to determine that 3 to 4 and 12 to 16 do not form a proportion. His work is shown at the right. Is he correct? Explain why or why not. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I'll see you tomorrow.